The Foundation, Part 2. The mental coordinator in correspondence to personality and behavior. The personality or persona, as stated by Carl Jung, is comprised of many different aspects of the human experience, and we each carry a version of it based upon how the world relates to our traits and the nature of our minds. Perception is not universal. It is based upon the dynamics of the persona and not the external environment. Persona, or the personality, is called the mask of the collective psyche, or in this case, it would be the role that we play to define ourselves within society. In a deeper sense, it would be the illusion of identity that is placed within the collective psyche of society. But in this exercise, we shall keep the concepts less dramatic and more to the level of what we are trying to explore in this study. Carl Jung stated that persona is the means for the individual consciousness to interact with the social community. It is a means in which both individual and society are able to dance without stepping on each other's toes. Even within the nature of the persona, we find a dualistic dynamic that mimics the aspects of a theater. We learn and understand why the theme of a mask for the personality plays such a crucial definition when trying to understand the personality. As stated again by Carl Jung, the theme of his work best describes the personality as having both characteristics of the sun and the moon, one that is seen in the light and the other which is hidden in the dark. These aspects are represented by phases like the moon, which is seen by the light of our perceptions. The sun projects the dynamics of observation upon the surface of the moon, which becomes our personality. In this format, we develop an almost triplicate understanding of the persona. A problem that can be seen when we discuss the nature of the persona is that it can become an overwhelming circumstance when faced with certain social settings. The personality allows us to navigate within society by keeping a respectable foundation that is accepted within society. All people have bad points or darker natures, and it is the mask of the personality that allows us to avoid these mishaps. This can sometimes become a trap for those in clinical psychology when the persona takes over and suppresses the true nature of the individual. We become the role, not the individual, and become trapped by the persona. It is in these cases that a trained professional must help an individual to discover or find their true selves again, and not to be a slave to the role of the personality. Personality is but a function of individuality and must not overshadow the true nature of the individual or person. The strength of the personality can be witnessed when we take into account managerial and executive reviews. These reviews focus upon certain traits that are primary for social interaction in an office environment. Managerial persona is important for the operational stability of a business hierarchy. Peer reviews and personality tests are used to facilitate the best personalities in the workplace, or better yet, to incorporate a sense of how to act when placed in a specific social and environmental engineered setting. The tests are used to see if an employee will exhibit specific responses when presented in certain situations. This shows that the individual knows what type of personality or mask of persona to incorporate when in certain situations at work or when dealing with coworkers or superiors. It propagates the fact that individuality and personality are separate. As for behavior, which is in the next section, we will see that it too becomes a function of individuality. We can see that the individual uses two aspects to interact with the environment. We will continue with digging deeper into the nature of the persona. How do the traits of the personality operate, and what is the truth behind the mask that we use to operate within the environment? In order to understand the nature of how certain parts of our reality can be witnessed while others are camouflaged, we must revisit dualism within the mind and see that the mind is separated into the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. It is within the conscious mind that our perceptions give notice to the environment. The sense modalities take in all information, but it is the mind that determines what will be noticed. The information gathered about the world in totality is all held within the subconscious mind. As for the perceptions of the conscious mind, the variables of the subconscious mind become hidden or off of the radar, and henceforth represent the hidden variables of the mental landscape. It is here that we must expand our pursuits into understanding the deeper aspects of the persona. The nature of how the personality interconnects and operates by using the Enneagram of personality to map out the persona. This process of trying to understand the personality was first developed by G.I. Gurdjieff and further developed by Oscar Ichazo, and gives an accurate understanding of how the personality is arranged within the individual. The Enneagram of personality can be used as a type of roadmap when trying to understand the interconnections of the persona. But before we can look deeper into its structure and significance, we must define its dynamics and concepts. First, let's reiterate and solidify in understanding that personality and individuality are not the same. Henceforth, personality serves as a mask with many different attributes that are choosing certain behaviors or interactions to use within the social environment. Now, with that in mind, we will further our investigation into the Enneagram and what it means to us. The Enneagram of personality deals with connecting certain aspects of the personality in order to get a complete picture. By understanding the Enneagram of personality, we can find out how certain personality traits can exhibit certain behaviors within a social setting or environment. The core type is designated by a number and represents the trait which is the primary cohesion of the personality. This core type is then reinforced by the adjacent core type numbers, which are designated as wings to the core type of that persona. These wings can have a large or small variation in the core type depending upon the individual. The interconnecting lines of the order type that connects to other core types, such as the lines that lead to the core type of 1, also lead to the core types of 7 and 4. These core types have a direct connection also to that particular persona. Henceforth, we have the wings and the interconnecting lines that help to establish a persona for the individual to use while navigating through the environment. The persona determines how we also perceive our reality and such create the behaviors that we use to interact with others in our environment. We can see that 5 major locations interact with a core type to make it actually a multi-core type, with 5 core types interacting through the mediation of one primary core. We must also take into account 3 instinctual variables within the core type itself, which are 1. Self-preservation, 2. Sexual intimacy, and 3. Social. Henceforth, a stratification for a multitude of personas can be acquired by the individual to use. With this type of variable interaction, we can see that The 9 Enneagrams of personality can create 27 different personas that can be acquired by the individual. For most within these 27, the individual can enhance or choose to ignore them, making each mass type fluid within its nature based upon the free will of the individual. So each 27 has its fluidic dynamic, showing that people or personas may be similar, but each is a different perspective based upon their individuality. 27 evolves into an even wider stratification, for the variation is based upon the individual. A better way to understand this concept is to recognize that each of the 27 can have various dimensions in their presentation within the environment based upon free will. Individuality shapes the Enneagram according to its needs. Now that persona has been determined and examined, we move to behavior and the works of B.F. Skinner and his studies on behaviorism. When we discuss behaviorism from the aspects of persona and individuality, we find that the focus falls upon the external variables within the environment. These variables influence how the individual determines which behaviors to enhance or decrease when dealing with certain aspects held within the persona. The theoretical structure of behavior stems from the systemic description of the manner in which the environment controls behavior. These environmental variables direct their influence upon the interrelationship that is held between respondent and operant behaviors. Respondent behaviors are behaviors elicited by stimuli and may be modified to responding conditioning, which is often called Pavlovian conditioning or classical conditioning, in which a neutral stimulus is paired with an eliciting stimulus. These particular variables are measured by their latency and strength within the environment. Operant behaviors are behaviors that are emitted and not induced by any particular stimulus. The strength behind operant conditioning, which is also called instrumental conditioning, is in the occurrence of a response that will eventually yield a reinforcer. This type of variable is measured by its rate or its repeatable nature. Another factor that helps in reinforcement for operant behaviors. Conditioning is shaping. This is an event that causes a gradual modification of behavior by the reinforcement of desired variations such as superstitious behavior. This event can also come from a response followed by a reinforcement to which it is unrelated. The strength behind this type of behavioral study is that it focuses on a 3-term contingency which deals with a stimulus, a response, and a reinforcer. The strength of this behavioral model shows a correlation with the environment and the chosen behaviors of the individual. The fallacy in this model is that it doesn't include anything from the mental perspective, but with a slight modification, we can create a mental perspective that correlates behavior with the aspect of the mental landscape. The first aspect that must be understood is that all things, either physical or mental, in nature are all born within the mind. In a sense, the environment becomes a reflexive property of the mind and henceforth reflects its authority upon reality. We then can describe the environment as a reflective, adaptable environment that is created by the mind, reflecting its own mental nature. We can then describe the mental landscape as a reflexive, adaptable environment which the individual must navigate through by using persona and behavior. We all have a face but never see it, unless in pictures in a mirror by conversation or through some other external source. It is our own face, yet we have no way of ever seeing it truly with our own eyes because our eyes are a part of it. This is the illusion of consciousness in our perceptual field. Simple behaviors become complex behaviors through chaining. This event occurs when a discriminate stimulus not only sets the occasion for subsequent behaviors, but can also build reinforcers for behaviors that precede it. In this scenario, a discriminate stimulus can also become a conditioner reinforcer. Chains are built by adding on more stimuli and responses within the context of the environment. Reinforcement shapes and directs behavior and is presented in two fashions, which can be defined by either the negative or the positive. Positive reinforcement finds its strength by using an applied event that is coupled with a response, such as receiving a reward. Negative reinforcement is based upon a stimulus that is associated with the removal or avoidance of some aversive event, such as punishments. If reinforcement is not directed with a continuous outcome, it can bring about an extinction of that behavior. Besides, for an extinction of a behavior, we must understand its various schedules of reinforcement, which includes continuous interval, fixed or variable, and ratio, fixed or variable. A continuous reinforcement is when each time a specific action is performed, it yields a reinforcement. This reinforcer is most effective when a new behavior is trying to be established. It quickly causes an established connection due to the association between the target behavior and the reinforcer. Interval reinforcement is based upon the timed intervals between reinforcements. Fixed interval concentrates on a procedure by which reinforcements are presented at fixed time periods, given that the correct response is recorded. The results of this procedure yield a response rate that is low just after reinforcement and then increases just before the next scheduled reinforcer. Variable interval is when behavior is reinforced after randomly timed durations from the last scheduled reinforcement. The results from this procedure create an outcome with steady responding that varies with a normal frequency of reinforcement. When discussing the nature of ratio schedules, we must understand that their primary focus is upon the ratio of responses to reinforcements. Fixed ratio schedules are when reinforcement is given after a certain number of responses have been collected, while a variable ratio schedule looks into the aspects of causing behavior after a number of responses have been randomized from one reinforcer to the next. The lower the responses required, the higher the rate of response. These schedules tend to produce very rapid responses with breaks in between following reinforcement. That is, if the outcome requires a high number of responses that are needed for reinforcement. This aspect of behavior is but one dynamic of a triad that helps to establish a relationship with the surrounding environment. This helps to define the next focus of the second section, which digs deeper into the dynamic of the mental coordinator and its variables. This concludes the second chapter on the mental coordinator. Thank you for watching.